Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear listeners. In this episode, we welcome Mr. Florindo Chivucute to Momentum Africa. Mr. Chivucute is the founder and executive director of Friends of Angola, a nonprofit that works on advocacy in Angola. So welcome. Welcome to Momentum Africa podcast.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chim. Thank you very much for having me in your podcast. It's a pleasure.
I'm certainly very happy that you're here and to share with us your thoughts and what you're doing. So can you share with us and the listeners what your incredible life journey has been working with Friends of Angola as the executive director, working on advocacy in Angola, community engagement, community journalism and such?
It has been wonderful. It's challenge without a doubt. I have a team in US and in Angola where we do our daily reports. But and something that I enjoy very much. I think one of the reasons I thought would be a good idea for us to have a different voice, not in the US, by working with our local partners in Angola, was because we speak Portuguese in Angola, as you well know, and so it's really hard to get news unless you are specifically working or focus on this type of work in places like Angola, Mozambique, Cabo Verde, Guinea-Bissau. Otherwise, it's really hard to get news from places like Angola, in Washington. So what we do is we tend to make sure that there's not just one voice, right? So there's the government who will feel right to advocate for whatever they're trying to achieve in Angola, but we also want to make sure there's another narrative, which is civil society. And so then folks can make their own judgment in regard to whatever issue they deem to be important or project they're trying to implement in Angola. So the current pandemic, it didn't affect us as well. It has been challenged in so many ways, but we one thing we start noticing is that as we deal with this pandemic throughout the world, but there's also a lot of human rights, a lot of issues related to elections and so on and so forth happen in the background, and they don't get enough attention. But overall, I would say it has been a challenge, but it's really something I enjoy in doing, and I believe I'll be doing this for some time.
So, as a leader, particularly as a executive director of Friends of Angola, working on these challenges facing Angola and particularly the youth, what would you say that have been some of the successful examples of your strategies that you're using to bring about community engagement, social transformation in Angola among the youth in particularly?
So I would say one of them, what we do is really empowering the youth, making sure they understand that their voice is heard, whether it's in the US whether it's in Angola or outside Angola. And the reason we're doing that, because we really focus on conflict prevention, the theories of change. Our main focus is how can we empower the youth, girls and boys, and to make sure that they understand that their voices have value, that they play an important role in the society, that they don't feel disenfranchised. And the reason we do that is because when folks feel disenfranchised, they look for different avenues to make their voice heard. And very often, more than we would like to, it's really comes to, that's how wars start. They engage in force and wording to, or use of force. They see that as the only option after they have attempted to use all other avenues to make their voice heard. And from my academic and professional experience, it doesn't take a lot to start a conflict, a violent conflict in places like Angola, because there's a high unemployment, and the population is extremely young. The majority of the population is extremely young, and they see themselves with, well, sometimes with almost no hope to have access to education, higher education, and start a new family, and have a job, and so buy a house, and so on and so forth. So and then we have those bad actors, right? So we have those actors who they all over the place. We have just the ones well known, that will be Boko Haram or Al Shabaab, but there are also others. They are nameless, but they are up there, and they can recruit those folks and those young fellows, and they can give them employment, and they can pay. Maybe as little as $10 per month, but they are providing employment, and that's how they see it. And these has been our main concern, as we have seen in places like Mozambique, in Cabo Delgado, as we have seen in Nigeria, and so many other places. That it's important to make sure that the youth understand that their voices matter, that we care about them, and they played an important role in society, and that the government needs to do more in order to address the socio-economic needs. That's extremely important, so we can avoid any potential armed conflict in Angola. And so, to answer your question, what we have seen through the projects that we have been implementing in Angola since 2014 is a number of youth coming out and more confident about what they do every single day in regard to echo their concerns. And it's not on a large scale as we would like to. We don't have the manpower and the economic capacity to be all over Angola, but in the main provinces where we are, which is Luanda, the capital, the most populated province in Angola, and Benguela, Wambus, and two more or three more where we usually do our projects. The youth, they are grateful, but they're also very confident about how they can be a positive player on social change and positive social change in Angola. So that's to us is rewarding. For us, it's already a positive outcome. And although we cannot do all, but I think we are on a good path, and we will continue to do so, making sure that we don't have other players trying to use those young fellows who are very vulnerable to start a conflict in Angola, because that's the last thing we need.
So this youth work that you have outlined, and you're very commended for doing this great work. Where does that sense of civic engagement, social activism that you embody comes from? If you can walk us through your own values and how you come about to decide to work on this very, very important topic.
That's a good question. So I was born and raised in Angola during the Civil War, and I've seen where human beings are capable to do to each other. I've seen the ugly, but also I've seen the wonderful things that we are capable to do for our friends, family, and neighbors. And so I very early I started engaging in activism in Angola. I believe I was in my early 18s or 90s, engaging in public health. How can we get more folks to get access to public health in a very small scale? I was a volunteer for a small NGO in Angola, trying to persuade the Angolan government on how important for folks to have access to public health service. So then I came to US. I immigrated to US. I I I went to George Mason before I went to Nova for my associate degree. Then I went to Mason for my undergrad in U.S. government and international affairs. Then I went back to do my master's degree in conflict resolution. I always, and of course, I mean, also there's a role of my parents, right? My parents, they always believe that yes, we were in the middle of civil war, and sometimes we never knew when where we're going to be next day, but we were so capable to do good things, and if there's a will up there for anyone to do something, it's possible to happen, and that we all can be dreamers and we all can make things happen, and to a very large extent. And of course, I mean, the church also played an important role. Even during the war, we wouldn't miss a Sunday school, or because my mom, that's one thing that would upset my mom every single day. So if you miss the church on Sunday, then that's, that you will get home and you have to face mother, you have to really explain why you didn't go to church. So so it's a mix of things that plays a role in my life. And I think the reason why evil prevails so many times is because sometimes there's so many good people who probably they're just sitting aside and we're not doing enough. And it's important for any of us, because we all do have this ability to do good things and bad things to some extent. And so and as I was completing my master's degree, this is when I really started to realize that I was having on my toolbox enough tools to put into practice many of the things that I have learned, and how to kind of reverse back some of the experience I've had during the Civil War, like that, how to empower people, the ability to make a positive social change, that's possible. That's the war is not always the solution. It shouldn't be a solution for whatever philosophical differences that either individual or group of people that have. And I also understood that the reason why sometimes war is used as a solution for any issue and philosophical differences that people have, or group of people, is because sometimes they don't have other tools, not need their toolbox in order to mitigate or reconcile the conflict, right? So they see that as a forced option, and that's how I think it's important for us to keep insisting and educating folks that no, there's a lot of wonderful tools up there. It's whether at home or elsewhere that you can talk, whatever is the issue. You don't have to be engaged in physical aggression. That we should be able to talk and whatever is the solution, but it's possible. And that has been my I would say one of my principal guide is really keeping empower those youth so they understand that there is a lot of options up there for them to make this positive change that they all dream it, and that's violence that shouldn't be as a first option, or an option at all for that matter, in order to achieve those goals.
Well, Angola and Africa is very fortunate to have someone as passionate as you are, and I can definitely attest to your academic experience at George Mason. That's why we first, of course, met. And I couldn't help but notice that you have been very passionate in educating us, honestly. I mean, the first time I've ever heard about Angola and the issues that are going on there is from you. And since then, of course, our friendship have been solid for years. And over the years, I've learned so much from you about Angola. So thank you for being that champion for human rights and human dignity, and for our youth in Africa, and particularly in Angola, to give them some hope that they too can become the next future leaders. So with that, you've alluded to your mom. I love that story about you going to the church, and if you don't, of course, you'll be in trouble. So this is a good segue into the next question. Who, besides your mom, of course, and people in your network who have opened the doors for you to become that leader who champions human rights and advocate for it constantly as you do?
Well, I would say both my mother and my father, they although they play different roles in my life, sometimes they converge, but they definitely a mother role, a mother for me. But also the youth that I work with, they inspire me every single day. It's the way I feel. So the unlimited potential they have. When I talk with those folks in Angola, when I meet them and I listen to their stories, to their dreams, to their inspirations, their concerns, it's very empowering, because as I've been growing older, I think I've become more cynical about certain things in life. And so what I've learned from those youth in Angola is that no, I mean we actually can make things happen, and giving up is not an option, and we should keep fighting for what we believe, and that's the probably the best way to achieve those outcomes. And I'm very grateful for all them. It's just wonderful, and they have inspired me so in many ways. To tell you this, in many ways, and I have no doubt that the Angola will change. That I'm hoping, hopefully in my lifetime, some, probably not all, but some of those goals will be achieved, and hopefully we will reconvene again, but to talk about not just the issues, but the progress we have made in Angola on the next webinar, and that's what I'm hoping for. And I'm not trying to be, and it's not naivete or anything, but I really believe this, because that's how they think, and I think that's very powerful, and I think it's possible to achieve some of those changes in our lifetime, and I'm looking forward to it.
I look forward to that too, indeed. So can you, based on your work with the youth and the change you've been working hard to bring about, can you provide us with some sense of what you have accomplished so far in terms of some numbers, or but also what have been some of the challenges you faced?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I will start with the success that I believe it's important to highlight them, which is we have implemented so far, with the help of many individuals as well as organizations such as the National Endowment for Democracy. We have implemented the 5 projects in Angola. Just to give an example, last year we have trained more than 300 youth on leadership and democratic values. So we are training those young fellows because they're the next leaders of Angola. They are the one who going to be leading Angola. So we want to make sure they have the tools they need in order to not just become a leader, but become a good leader. Some men and women who can lead the country and who can lead us in a better directions, who care about their neighbors, their communities, rather than just enrich themselves. So we want, so that's where we have accomplished in the spite of the pandemic. That's where we have accomplished last year, and we continue this year. We're going to be in 5 provinces. The U.S. Embassy in Angola also gave us a small grant, and that helped us extend our training capability because we believe on the power of education. And we believe that it's a powerful tool. Once you have it, no one can take from you. And we want to make sure that those young fellows, they understand that they have power, and they have power to change things, and they have those tools. So in addition to the 300 plus young folks that we have trained in 3 different provinces, we are going to be in 5 provinces this year, and that's very important to us. Another aspect to that I think is important, we have been doing it, and I think we can claim some credit, is helping building to new groups, new civil society group. We are helping those groups to strengthen their capacity, either their technical capacity or ability to make to echo their concerns around the world. So we have been working with formal and informal groups, help them on how to write budgets, how to write a proposal, and how to be accountable for the funds they have acquired. So throughout the year, in addition to the training session we have done, we have given some small grants for microcredits, for micro projects. So, and we started doing this in the past 3 years. So we give small grants of let's say $200 or $100 to them, but we ask them to write a small proposal, 1 page. And we guide them on how to do so. We ask them how to write a budget, a small budget. Then once we give them the funds, in addition to the narrative report that they provided to us, explain how was the activity, how many people participated, and so on and so forth. We also ask them to prove to us how the money was spent, right? Accountability, because we cannot ask for accountability from the government when we ourselves don't have these norm within our organizations as well. So by doing that, we hoping that those small informal groups, they then hopefully become strong with they have the technical know-how to work in the same level or better than Friends of Angola. So then we have a partners on the ground that we can engage you with on the same level, and then we can amplify the work we are doing. So we have seen a growing number of civil organization group throughout Angola. Now, we haven't helped all them, we have helped some, but it's just in a very short period of time, it's amazing the number of groups that are growing. And then, of course, we also help them, empower them with the tools they need in order to have a non-violence engagement. We make sure they understand that there are tools, and those tools can be used to achieve or to echo their concerns and to make new alliance, either within civil society or outside civil society, in order to achieve their goals.
That's incredible work that you have led. So the lessons you've learned from this is, I mean, if you can point out some lessons, what lessons have you learned?
Yeah. So, and then here's the challenge, right? The second part of the question. So, one thing we have learned so far in Angola, although I'm from Angola, but I've been living in the U.S. 15 years now. It's that it's important to understand that many of those groups or individuals who are within civil society, they are very vulnerable, very extremely vulnerable, um, because there's extremely high unemployment, and they do this work because they believe in what they do. So so be- so and then also there's because they are vulnerable, there's also the aspect of security, uh, um, and so when we make our project, we want to make sure that yes, we would like to have volunteers for activities, but you cannot expect them to have money to pay taxes or to have lunch during the activity. That's important for us to have this budget. It's a minimum that we can provide to those folks, that they sometimes are living their own workplace or school or their home, with no a single pen on their pocket, but they have the will to do. So we want to make sure that we as we empower those folks, but we also understand that there's really an economic need. There's really um, a need for us as an organization to 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 allocate funds to pay for transportation, communication, and some other those things that we probably would take for granted here in the US. If I work for volunteer and I've done so, no one paid for my transportation or communication, or no one paid for my lunch. I work as a volunteer for 3 months or 2 months, but no in Angola. That's a completely different environment. That's one. The other one is that they are so the youth, the way they operate, it's a very unique in the sense that they are organized, but not without leadership at all. uh, and some of those folks, they also, they either their parents or someone else within their family is connected to the same government, that they are constantly remind them the need to change. uh, so they having this conversation not just in the street, but they having this conversation at home as well. And this is something they they keep telling us, that yes, we raising those concerns on the street, but we also having this conversation on our coffee table, on a dinner table. We having this conversation, and and they are aware of the risk they're taking. Uh, the third one is really security, which is a very problematic in Angola. The risk that many of those folks are taking every single day is extremely high, just for doing, which is a democratic process, which is completely legal within the Angolan constitution. You exercise your freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, but it's very dangerous in Angola. Uh, from time to time, we have seen activists being arrested, detained, tortured. Unfortunately, some killed, just by participating on peaceful protest. The most recent one we have seen was in Luanda Norte, Cafunfu, where it's on several people were killed because they were protesting for because of the dire situation they live in within the communities, although the province is one of the largest producers of diamonds in Angola. That they live in extremely poverty. And another one was in Luanda, a young fellow university student who was killed um, during a peaceful protest. So security is a challenge. It's a really big challenge because the Angolan government they spend a lot of money in security to spy on its fellow citizens, and sometimes within the legal framework, sometimes outside the legal framework, and so uh, and and it's very problematic. I mean, the other one is the funds. The last one, the funds are just there's not enough. There's not enough funds for to advocate for human rights, democracy. And we in the U.S. Definitely there's more organizations funding the work we do, but not enough. To be honest with you, not enough. And we're hoping this new administration, the Biden-Harris administration, will allocate more funds on to make sure that we stand up, we stand by our values. Those are American values. That's the human rights, democracy. Those are those are those are the values that unify this country in so many ways. There are many people who have come to this country because they have flee from dictatorship, from communism, and so I'm hoping that the Biden-Harris administration will provide not just financial but also more moral support for activists that are fighting every single day for advanced democratic values in Angola and around the world.
As a leader, you must have some leadership style to navigate all these nuances and challenges that you have brought up. So if you could pinpoint 2 or 3 leadership style that have guided you to be that successful leader for Friends of Angola to bring about that change, so other youth throughout Africa could also learn from your examples, and we could all benefit as okay, if you're about to become a leader, maybe these are the checklists you need to include.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'm not sure if there's a blueprint for that question, but one thing I've learned throughout my career is it's important for you to understand the problem. What are you trying to resolve, right? It doesn't matter the will that you have or the expertise that you have, but it's important to understand the problem, understand the cultural nuances, understand the all the players in order for you as a leader to have a positive role on issue that you're trying to tackle. So and also to avoid really mistakes that sometimes can be costly, not just in terms of funds but also life, human beings. I've spent a lot of time, and I still do, talking to different people and listen to them to how they see the problem or opportunity that we as an organization, Friends of Angola, we perceive to be something that needs to be addressed. And the reason we're doing that is because we work in two different contexts. We work in American context and we work in Angolan context. Those are completely two different contexts, right? And and it's important to understand, to see where the discrepancies are between their views and ours, and see where we can improve in order to have a positive impact. So and so know the problem, know the problem well as much as you can, um, uh, so you can have a positive outcome, uh, and be willing to make uh, to build relationships every single day that help advance your goals, in terms as an organization. Um, uh, so in part of the work we do is really building the relations. We build the lasting relations with different groups or individuals in Angola and outside Angola, to to make sure that, or to advance, or to amplify our projects in Angola, and 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 don't make too many assumptions, because assumptions can be very problematic, um, very problematic, and I have to check myself all the time. How can I uh, address in a specific issue uh, without uh, uh, no overlook some aspects that might be important. And that includes security, for instance. When I'm trying to communicate with someone, what kind of tools I can use. I'm here in the US. Of course, I'm not 100% safe. There's always, if and someone want to cause an harm, they can attempt, but it's a little bit harder here than places like Angola. That's I know for fact. So I have to be mindful of how the risk level that folks in Angola are facing in comparison with mine here in the US. Um, uh, so I think it's important to to understand the people you work with, be mindful of the local nuances, um, and trying to learn as much as you can of the complexity of the issue that you are dealing with, so you don't create more harm than you intended to. Um, and building those relationships are extremely important. There's no doubt, um, because they they help, not just implement the projects and amplify them, but they also, on business perspective for NGOs with very limited resources, they also help reduce the cost of the project's implementation. Um, a project that probably could cost $500,000, we can do that with half or less than half. And for in many ways, it think it's because of the uh, our local partners, uh, that they do every single day the work, um, uh, and because they believe in what they do, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to accomplish what we have accomplished so far. One thing I would like very quick, and this is where I also learned from General Colin Powell, his book. If you are doing something, you do well. It doesn't matter what you do, right? So you make sure you do, and you do well, whether it's mapping the floor or you leading a 500 Fortune company. So you make sure you do well, and for our type of work we do, persistence is also important.
Thank you for that. How, in conclusion, what would you say your advice would be for the, I mean, you've alluded to it already, but more specifically about the youth in Angola? What advice would you give them for those who feel hopeless or feel like they cannot make it as leaders? So you're a good example of a successful leader, if you may add to that. And then also, as we conclude this, what is in your mind as far as thoughts? Now we're living in pandemic times of COVID-19. So has Angola been affected by that? If not, how much? Or but also, how does that bring challenges or lack of it for your incredible work that you do in Angola? Thank you.
Yeah, no, those are very good questions. I so to answer your first question in regard to the youth, advice I would give to anyone is don't give up. Let's keep the dream alive. Let's keep the dream alive. Because if we look into world history, you will see that many of the changes that we have made is because of the youth. Although we don't give enough credit to them, in my opinion, but it's the youth. The youth are being forefront of so many changes around the world, and it's important not to underestimate, undervalue the role they play. So and so it's important to keep the dream alive, and it's important so to understand that if you don't do it, who else is going to do it? No one else is going to do it. So you have to make things happen, and I'm sure that so it can be frustrated sometimes the work we do because you don't see the outcomes on a short period of time. It's sometimes it take decades. I mean, literally decades sometimes for you to start seeing the fruits of the work that we do. But sometimes take a short period of time, and depending on where you define success. And I think it's important to highlight the role that the youth have been playing, not to repeat myself, throughout history. And they're the hope, and you are the hope, the youth of so many communities. And they're the one they're going to be the next leaders of those community, those states. So it's important for you not just to keep the dream alive, but also to prepare so you can become a better leader than the one we have today. In regard to the COVID-19, it has been a challenge, as alluded to in the beginning. It definitely affected Angola, and I was in Angola last year for a couple of months, but not to the extent that has been affecting U.S. or Europe or South Africa, for that matter, our neighbor. It's way less. Of course, to lose one life is too many. There's no doubt, but it's important to note that malaria is killing more than COVID-19 in Angola. And so if we can keep our focus on malaria, just as we do on this pandemic, I'm sure we can save many lives. I'm sure we can mitigate these astronomical numbers of people who die every single day. We adapted. So the good news is that we human beings, we have this ability to adapt, and our work didn't stop. yes, we had to make changes. We had to shift our budget and activities, allocate funds to activities that or precautions that we didn't foresee, but didn't stop our work, and we were able to close 2020 with all the activities that we had planned. So um, so it's affecting Angolan economy, the pandemic, because of some of the restrictions that have been imposed. But I think the government, just like any government around the world, they're having a hard time to deal with this pandemic. Uh, and I like to believe that they're doing their best, and I hope that uh, uh, we we get back to normal with the new vaccinations that we have in US, Europe, and Asia. We gonna be back to normal, if whatever we define normal, anytime soon. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Thank you so much for this lively discussion and for your thoughtful ideas and call to action. Now, if people want to reach out to you, maybe they'd be interested to join your campaign or activities, why would they find you so that they can reach out?
Yeah, no, I thank you very much for this opportunity. On behalf of Friends of Angola team, I thank you again. It has been wonderful talking to you in regard to some of the work we are doing in Angola. If anyone is interested to join us, to support us, please reach out to via email, or first of all, you can go to our website. It's www.friendsofangola.org. You can contact us through email, info@friendsofangola.org, and then also through a cell phone, 202-413-7432. Again, 202-413-7432. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I'm very, very honored to have sat down with you, my friend, on Momentum Africa podcast. We also would like to thank our listeners for tuning in. So thank you so much. Have a good evening or good afternoon where you are.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for you, for your team.
You're welcome.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Bye bye.